In this part, we will discuss a few more goals of cybersecurity. As we showed in the previous part, the CIA Triad forms the main goals in information security and cybersecurity. These are confidentiality, integrity, and availability. There are also several other goals that support these main goals. Some of these goals will be briefly discussed here. They are accountability, traceability, authentication, authorization, access control, and non-repudiation. These goals are very related to each other, and as we will see, some of them support the others. Starting with accountability, this aims to make sure that people or entities can be held responsible or accountable for their actions. This requires that actions must be traced uniquely to that entity so that that entity can be held responsible. Traceability supports accountability, since if we need to hold an entity responsible, we need to trace and record what actions are performed on the system. Traceability is then defined as the ability to trace the actions taken by a particular entity. In other words, audit information needs to be kept and protected so that actions affecting security can be traced to the responsible entity. To accomplish this, the system typically keeps an audit log or audit trail of security-relevant events. This audit log can then be used to detect and investigate intrusions or a compromise of a confidentiality, integrity, or availability. This audit log must itself be protected, in particular from integrity breaches. If the log can be corrupted or deleted, it can no longer be used for tracing actions, and accountability is compromised. Authentication is defined as the process of verifying a claim about an entity or system resource. This can be used to allow access to only a given set of users or entities. It can also be seen as a supporting mechanism for accountability. If we do not know who performed a particular action, then we cannot hold someone accountable. There is a distinction between user authentication and data authentication. User authentication is the process of verifying the identity of a user by verifying claims that presumably can only be made by that particular entity. This is probably the most intuitive form of authentication, and it takes place when we wish to log into a system or application. This can be done with passwords, some one-time tokens, or biometrics, which is increasingly popular due to its simplicity. The other aspect of authentication is data authentication. Data authentication is the process of confirming both the origin and the integrity of data that has been transmitted. Thus, integrity of data is also included in data authentication, but we add the property of being able to verify where the data comes from, or from whom. This is often accomplished by using a cryptographic key when creating the data, and then verifying that the data could only have been created with knowledge of that key. Assuming that the key is kept secret, only the holder of the key can be the originator. Authorization and authentication are often confused, but while authentication is about verifying claims, authorization is the process of determining if a given entity has access to a given resource. This is achieved through access control. Determining access requires authentication, otherwise we do not know who we are granting or denying access to. The authorization result is being logged through the traceability mechanism, which also connects authorization to accountability. As a side note, access control here is only understood as the actual grant or denial of access, so it supports authorization. But access control is sometimes also used as an umbrella term in itself. Then, access control encompasses both authentication, authorization, and audit that provides traceability. The definitions that you can see here are not clear-cut and can depend on the situation. We can summarize the connection between these terms as follows. First, we authenticate an entity in order to verify the identity. Then, access to a resource is authorized by using access control. We keep a log of these events for traceability, and all this together will give accountability. So if we rearrange this to go by the sequence of events, this is often written as authentication, authorization, and accounting, which is the process of ensuring accountability. This is known as AAA or AAA, and this is an abbreviation often encountered in cybersecurity. To this sequence of events, we also add the non-repudiation property. Non-repudiation is the property of one not later being able to deny having performed a particular action. This can be divided into non-repudiation of origin, which means that you cannot deny having sent or created the data, and non-repudiation of receipt, which means that you cannot deny having received the data. A typical example of non-repudiation of origin is a digital signature. Only the holder of the signature key can create the signature, so assuming that the key is not leaked at the time of signing, it must have been created by the key owner. In the next part, we will discuss and compare a few different terms that are related to the adversarial side of cybersecurity.